Hi, today I want to show you how you can create a fully native Stripe Elements checkout experience directly in Wized and Webflow without having to write a ton of custom code. It's already pre-made, you just have to customize and tweak some things here and there. And yeah, let's get right into the demo. So as you can see, we can easily move between those tabs in a fully custom and fully secure Stripe Elements checkout widget that is directly loaded within the canvas in Wized. And yeah, we can create custom checkout experiences right here. And yeah, it's great if you're going to build a marketplace or if you even need to connect this with Stripe Connect. This really opens up all the possibilities here. And yeah, let's get right started in setting this whole thing up. So first of all, we just need to go to the Webflow part and we need to add the Stripe JavaScript library on top of here. So we're going to go to the page where we want to have this element be loaded in, and we need to add the v3 as of right now for the Stripe library. And then the setup is completely easy. We're just going to add a custom form element, ideally as a custom element, and we're going to add the ID of payment form right on here. And in this payment form, we're going to add a div block, ideally as a custom component, and we're just going to add the ID of payment element on here. We need to add the ID on the form to then have Stripe capture the form as send request. And we need to add the ID of payment element on top of this div block so that Stripe can actually render all those inputs in this div block and then have the form, the payment form submissions be submitted securely without having to have that data go somewhere else besides Stripe. So that's very important for security reasons. You cannot just make that work with form components. And as you can see right here, we just have a simple button that is a custom component, and we're going to add the ID of submit button. So Stripe will then know once we click that submit button, we will just be going to initiate that payment in Stripe. We're going to add a type of submit. So we're going to submit actually the form because Stripe is looking for on submit. And then we're just going to add a Wized attribute of payment amount text so that we can actually set, if I would just remove this class, a pay secure $50 or something like this. And here is another little feature. We have a class of isHidden to just simply set the text in here to black. And when this class is removed, meaning we're going to remove this after the request finished, we're just going to set it to white. So like when it's loading, it looks like this. And then when it was successful, we're just going to remove it and have like the amount fade in so people know, oh, I can pay $20. Look at that. And it's just to make the experience even better. And that's the whole that's the whole Webflow setup. And let's go to Wized. So first of all, and this variable is not needed anymore, we need to get a client secret. We don't have that available right now because we still have to go through setting up the endpoint. But just so that you know, this now is a good time to create a variable in Webflow, a variable in Wized called client secret, just so that we have it handy. And now we're going to create a request called payment intent, and we're going to call our payment intent endpoint in Xano. And we're going to pass on the amount of $20. I know it's going to say 2,000, but those are the two decimals. So this will be $20. And we're going to pass on, in this case, just a static user ID. I highly recommend you that you're going to use dynamic examples for either one of those because you don't want to have a certain user hard-coded into your application. But this is just for example purposes, and you can just customize this template that is also in the video descriptions to your liking, however you want to work with that. You're free to customize that. And yeah, that's basically it. And now when we run this, you can see that we're going to initiate this element in here. But that's something we do later down the road. We're actually creating the payment intent that is then connected to this element in here. And you may think that sounds familiar, or that looks familiar to me, this element. This is the same element that every store uses that is run on Shopify, by the way, because Shopify uses Stripe elements as well to capture the payments for their merchants. That's why you can also add tips and all of that in this custom Stripe element. And yeah, let's just really quick go to Xano, and let me just walk you through the endpoint. Because we cannot render the Stripe element generically. We have to render the Stripe element customized for each payment intent. And what's a payment intent? Meaning, I'm a user and I say, hey, I would love to buy this 2 apples and 5 oranges. And then I will say, perfect, you want to buy all of this? Perfect, this is how much this costs. And this is a payment intent. The user has the intent to pay. And since the user has the intent to pay for his or her goods, we want to get ready to give the user the option to pay. So we're designating a certain session, basically, for this user, for this intent to pay this purchase. And this is what the payment intent is. So we're just going to call, in this example, the payment intent on page load. But you want to maybe call this payment intent after another request finishes, after a user clicks on a button, after a user fills something out on a form. This really depends on your use case. But that's what the payment intent is. So we need to create the payment intent. And we're just going to receive the amount and the user ID in Xano. And now we're just going to do an API call to Stripe for their payment intents. Right here, we're going to do a post, and we're going to set the amount to our dynamic input of amount. And we're going to set the currency. Right now it's just hard-coded to US dollars, but you could even have that dynamic as well. Or based on a geolocation you track down in Wized. And then we're just going to have automatic payment methods enabled. That's just like their default. You can remove that however you want. And then we're going to pass on one piece of metadata for the user ID, like in this array thingy. And we're just going to add the input of user ID so that when we actually successfully complete that payment on the front end, on the JavaScript side, on the SDK side, we can track it back. Because we have the payment intent, now the user pays, but we don't know which user paid this payment intent. We need to link this payment intent to a specific user. So before we're going to create a payment intent, we're going to send the user ID to this payment intent. So this payment intent is already linked to our internal user ID. So then when the user pays on our front end that payment, we get our webhook in our backend, or however we want to set that up, and we know, oh, user 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on, paid, and now we're going to activate his or her account. Very easy. And that's it. And yeah, I'm not going to, that you're just going to add like your Stripe API key, which I just, by mistake, maybe just exposed. So I'm going to change that after this video. And that's basically it. And then we just want to make sure that we're going to get the .response, .result. Because Stripe will give us a whole chunk of data. Most of it will be HTTPS or something. We don't want that. We're just going to take API .response, so we're going to get the response. And the only thing that really interests us in the response is the result, because it's all about results. So we're just going to add the result in here. And that's how we're going to get this simplified version, because otherwise we'll be getting even more. So now we're just going to publish that. And now we are good to go. So when I'm going to run this function in here with the hard-coded data, which ideally should be dynamic in your example, you will see that I'm creating this payment intent, and the number always updates because it's always now a new intent. Right? So my Stripe account is now getting jammed with payment intents. One way to do it. So that's the payment intent. But now, for example, if I wouldn't have now Stripe's SDK run in here, that payment intent is pretty much useless because the payment intent will look like this. It's just data, right? In here. It's just data. So now we need to turn that data actually into a payment module so that the user can actually interact with the payment intent data and to pay that payment intent. And that's what we're going to do in the SDK here. But before we're going to do that, of course, we need to perform the request to create the payment intent. Now, this is just in this example set on page finishes loading, which in your example, you more than likely want to have this tied to an action on click when request finishes, depending on how your setup is set up, or when the user inputs a date, if you want to build a whole booking system app or a whole next Airbnb thing for luxury rental apartments, or I have no idea what you want to do. You want to then base it, for example, on an input action on a calendar or on a confirm button or something like this. But just so that you know that this exists here. But now let's get started with the exciting stuff. So when our payment intent request finishes, now we're going to do that stuff that basically does the whole magic for us. So we're going to define the const stripe as stripe, and then we're going to add our private key in here. I'm not going to scroll too badly now. And we're now just going to customize the appearance right in here. You can go crazy with those colors or use even your variables for that. And they even support dark mode and multiple themes, as you can see in here. But we're just going to keep it flat today. And then we just have all the options. So we have the layout. You can change this, for example, to tabs, which will then make it look like this. Or you can change it back to accordion. Oh, accordion. And then you'll have the accordion. So you can change that. And we can do like default collapsed. We can do like true, for example. And then it will start always on default collapsed like this. So we can really go crazy with Stripe's API in here. Oh, that's not false. Okay, false, perfect. And then we can add radios. If we like radio buttons, we could, for example, add radio buttons. Look at that, how great that looks. This is like Shopify 2.0. Wow, look at that. So we have our radio buttons in here. And spaced accordion items, we could do, for example, false. And now we're even more Shopifying this here. We don't have them spaced. It's like this one list right in here. Actually, I like that design. I'll keep it like this. That's nice. Perfect. So we got it like this. And this is where we're going to do all those configurations. Now in here, we want to do a client secret. We want to have this equal the client secret that will be stored in our Wized variable for this payment intent. And now let's actually stop right here. Let's just add stop in here so we know where to go back. And let's go to our variable. So we want to set this variable with our client secret, which is basically the identifier to create this checkout session for this specific payment intent. That's what we're going to call the client secret. And we're going to get this client secret in our payment intent response we're going to get through Xano. And by the way, we can also add tips, just so that you know, in case you want to have like a tipping jar, like 50, 80, 120%, you can do that too. Or maybe you want to start at 10. So you can even add tips in there as well. So it's really neat. And yeah, let's just search for the payment intent. We even got the metadata. Isn't that great? Look at that. But we will have somewhere in here the payment intent, the client, we will have the client secret right here. So we're going to have the client secret right here. So we're just going to do it very simple. We're going to have this client secret variable equal our client secret like this. Perfect. And we're going to do this as a computed variable just to make sure that everything is going fine. Wonderful. And now we're just going to go to our SDK again, and we're going to, in here, we're going to have the client secret for Stripe equal the v.clientSecret, our variable right here. And now we're going to have elements equals stripe.elements.clientSecret.appearance. So we want to have the elements based on our appearance in here. We want to have this. We want to add that object in here. And we're going to add the client secret in here, merge that together and call this elements. And then we want to do payment element will be elements.create. We're going to have payment, and then we're going to add options in here as well. So we're merging this, we're taking this, where we have defined the appearance and the client that is assigned to that, or the payment intent that is assigned to that, and we're going to take this, which we defined up here, and we're going to create a payment with following options for the accordion, for the radios, for all of that styling. And now after we merge these options again together, we will end up with the payment element, which we defined up here. So we're going to do payment element dot mount, and then we're going to target the payment minus element, which we have defined by the attribute ID in here, and we're going to smash everything that we just defined in here using Stripe's SDK inside this div block, and that is how we're going to have this rendered in this div block. That's how that is working on the backend. And then now we need to handle form submission. So you could do this in Wized, but I like to use Stripe's documentation in this case, so this is a bit more code savvy. You could do it in Wized, but it's really simple. So we're just going to define the const of form, and this will be the element with the form we targeted by ID. As you can see in Webflow, we target this form by ID in here. We're going to take this form, we're going to add an event listener of submit, so we're going to look if this form was submitted. Again, you could do this in Wized. And then we're going to do event.preventDefault. And then we're going to do stripe.confirmPayment, because on form submission, when we click the submit button or click on enter, in some cases, we want to confirm the payment. So we're going to go call elements, confirm params, and then we're going to add our success URL in here. In this case, this goes to wized.com. And then we're going to run the function. If there is an error, we're going to console log an error. This helps us for internal debugging, or will help you if you're going to tweak around with this. And then if this was successful, so if else, if there's no error, we're going to console log payment was successful. Perfect. And that's the whole magic for Stripe Elements. And then the last thing is we're going to set the dynamic text. So we're just going to do, we're going to target this item in here where we have the attribute for Wized to set the text in there. And we're going to do pay, and then we're going to do, we're going to do pay plus r.payment, and then we're going to take our variable with the amount, which we're going to get back from right in here. We're going to take the amount, so this will be added in here, so like this, and we're going to divide it by 100, because we're going to get decimals, so we need to divide it by 2 zeros to get like $20, and then we can do plus the $sign, so we're going to show it as dollars. And actually, let me remove the CSV file, because that's not needed in this example, and I will get like the text pay $20. So we have pay plus, and then we're going to do in those brackets the calculation to turn the 2000, which is supposed to be 20, into 20, and then we're going to do a plus of $sign, and we're going to do another plus of secure, and this will do pay $20 secure. And then we're going to set this as the text, and we actually can do plain text in this example. And now here's the fancy stuff. You see that we have this fade in, like the stripe. Look at that. If you go back in here, you see that this payment intent is slowly fading in. We first have it all dark, and then we have like this payment intent gradually fading in using the class in here. So we actually have the set class action in Wized that will have this class of isHidden, which will just do the font black, and therefore it will look like it's hidden. We'll just do it like this, or you could even do transparent if you want. And basically what Wized is now doing after the payment intent was successful, so meaning after we got that data and now Stripe started initiating their SDK, we're going to remove this class to have this text gradually fade in, thanks to our transition of 475 milliseconds. Just like that. And that way, we're just going to go in the set dynamic amount. We're going to set class is hidden, and we're going to base this that this request to get the payment request has requested doesn't equal true. So we could also do equals false, but if it doesn't have this request requested yet, we're going to keep this attribute of is hidden. And if it was successfully requested, we're going to remove the attribute, resulting in that this text will gradually fade in, thanks to the 475 millisecond CSS transition that applies to all elements. And that's the magic behind creating Stripe elements, and it fully works. I can do 4 2 4 2 4 2 4 2 4 2 4 2 4 2 4 2 4 2, a lot of 4 2s like this, and I'm going to even more 4 2 this. I can have like all those funky stuff from Stripe. I can click on pay $20 secure, and you will see that we just paid $20 securely, and we actually got redirected to Wized because we successfully paid this balance in test mode, so nothing was actually paid, but we paid this balance if you turn it into live mode. And that is how you're going to create a Stripe element that works fully natively in Wized. And then since we're applying the metadata on here, when you get the webhook back from Stripe, you actually have your user ID in there, and then you can have some things going on your backend, in Xano, in Supabase, or whatever, that will just take this user ID, and then if the payment was successful, and activate their account, or trigger some other automation that will ship out their products, or something like this. And yeah, that's how you're going to create a Stripe element checkout, or Stripe element payment module in Wized and Webflow with really little coding, and it's quite simple. It's very easy to do. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them down in the comments below. There will be also a full clonable just for this in the video description, so check that out for the Webflow and the Wized site, and I'll put in the Xano snippet in there as well. And thank you so much for watching, and yeah, see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.